Hello everyone, I'm Ultrasonic Rainboom, and today I'm going to talk about my thoughts on G6.
6? Yes, 6!
So G6 was recently announced at San Diego Comic-Con as a new show titled My Little Pony Forever Friendship. And all we have right now from G6 is a poster of the main characters and the G6 theme song, which almost sounds like an anime theme song or something. Maybe just because the vocals sound high-pitched in the song, but as someone who's watched a lot of anime, it does remind me of an anime theme song kinda, and I very much love it. And on that topic of anime, the overall art style of the show looks very anime-inspired. And they also said in the panel that this promo art will be the art style of the show, basically.
This is not a frame from the finished series, but it does really embody that visual North Star that we are building upon. It is the pastel-powered, glittering, hope-core fantasy land that these characters and their emotional journeys will be at the heart of.
This art style looks very cool and kind of similar to anime. Specifically, the highly detailed eyes look very similar to how anime eyes look like all the time, as well as the overall design. Imagine if we actually got a My Little Pony anime. That would be amazing and a dream come true. That's something I've been wanting for years. Anyway, after this announcement came out, everyone started calling G6 a G4 reboot because the main characters are Twilight, Pinkie Pie, Fluttershy, and Rainbow Dash. However, just because G6 is reusing G4 characters doesn't necessarily mean it will be a G4 reboot. One thing that everyone in the fandom seems to be forgetting, or just straight up ignoring, is the fact that literally every single generation of My Little Pony reuses old characters from old previous generations. Every generation does this. Applejack and Spike are from G1, but no one calls Friendship is Magic a G1 reboot just because it has Applejack and Spike from G1. Rainbow Dash, Pinkie Pie, Rarity, and Ponyville are all from G3. Literally half of the main 6 are all from G3. But no one calls Friendship is Magic a G3 reboot just because half the main 6 are from G3 characters. Just because G6 uses G4 characters does not necessarily mean it will be a G4 reboot. Every single generation of My Little Pony reuses old characters. Every generation does this. This is not a new thing at all, but it is very normal for My Little Pony to do this. It shouldn't be something we should be surprised about at all, because literally every generation of My Little Pony does this. And if you look at the image we have, you can see that the characters look very different from the G4 counterparts. Fluttershy looking very different with the blue highlights in her hair, and also with a different hairstyle, meaning the characters will likely be completely different, or maybe even have different personalities and backstories than they had in G4. It has also been confirmed that the voice actresses for the main 6 from G4 will not be returning for G6, but they instead will have new voice actors instead. Now, this might seem like a bad thing, but this is actually a very good thing and very normal thing for My Little Pony to do. Let's go back to G3. G3 has Pinkie Pie, Rainbow Dash, Rarity, and Spike, but none of the voices of the G3 characters are the same in G4. No one gets angry or mad for G4 for changing the voice actors from G3, so then why should we get mad at G6 for changing the voice actors when G4 literally did the same thing? Also, a lot of the actors from G4 have been voicing My Little Pony characters for over 20 years. 20 years! It's time for them to have a break, don't you think? And the characters from G3 that were in G4 were changed drastically. In G3, Rainbow Dash had a personality that was more like G4 Rarity, saying "darling" all the time, and even liking fashion in the Core 7 era. And Rainbow Dash in G3 isn't even a Pegasus, but an Earth Pony who loves rainbows.
Rainbows, darlings, rainbows!
And Rarity in G3 is nothing like in G4. She's a little kid who's also a princess, who has Cheerly as her mother/feature figure. Her character in G4 is nothing like how she's supposed to be or it was in G3. Whether you like it or not, these G3 characters didn't come from G4. The G4 characters came from G3. G3 came first, meaning that G4 is the one that changed things, not G3. And in G4, the characters are nothing like how they used to be in G3. But does that mean that we should hate on G4 because they changed the characters too much? No! Just because something is different from what it used to be doesn't mean what it is now is bad. Change isn't always a bad thing, but it can be a very good thing too. If it wasn't for change, then we would have never got G4 the way it was. This is what we need to prepare for when G6 comes out. It is likely that they might change their personalities and characters from the main 6 completely and make them into new characters, like what Lauren Foss did with the main 6, and how she completely changed and reinvented My Little Pony, and changed it to be completely different and new than it was before. If these G6 characters were drastically different than how they were in G4, people will likely get mad or upset that they are so different and nothing like how they used to be. But we have to remember that every generation of My Little Pony does this too. They always change the characters. But just because the characters are different doesn't mean that it's bad. G4 did the exact same thing with drastically changing characters from previous generations, but that doesn't mean that we should hate on G4 for changing the characters, right? No, because change can be good. And if they change the characters in G6, we might actually grow to love the G6 versions as much as we love the G4 versions. But sadly, it seems like a lot of people are already hating on G6 and don't even want to give it a chance at all. Future me here. One thing I didn't emphasize enough in this video, especially in the beginning of this video, is how a lot of the criticisms people have of G6 is how they're using G4 characters and going back to G4 nostalgia. And you know what? That is very fair. You have every right to be skeptical about G6. You have every right to say that, oh, it's bad that using G4 characters. Yeah, I completely agree with you. I wish that they would use the original characters as well instead of going back to G4. However, I also think it's unfair for us to already be hating G6 before we actually watched it. I think it's fair for us to actually watch it first and then we decide whether it's good or bad. We should give G6 a chance rather than already hating it before we actually seen it before. And if you're wondering why I'm recording this from a plushie, it's just because this video is taking so long to make. I'm just trying to get this video done as fast as possible. It's just to make the editing process easier and faster. So now I'll get back to the video. But if G6 is different than G4, it doesn't mean it's bad. This is something that's also briefly mentioned in the panel, as shown here.
You were talking about it earlier, Lauren, about when we spoke before, you had said something that I think really informs your work. And you said this comment where it was like, you know, it's not just okay to be different. Like, being different is amazing. You know, that is the philosophy. That is the philosophy that Lauren set forward in her work. And so, you know, Ty and I, it is the heart that we have in Forever Friendship is to really give our characters spaces to explore that really what makes you different is what makes you amazing.
This is very similar to the unfair hate of G5. A lot of people hated on G5 when it came out. Not because G5 was bad, but because G5 was too different from G4, and people were too biased to G4 and wanted G5 to be more like G4, to have similar characters to G4, similar music, less pop music, more the G4 style musical music, to have similar stories and even have the same animation style. I can't tell you how many times I've heard the argument that G5 would be better if it was only animated in a G4 style. Like, I'm so tired of hearing this. I'm so tired of hearing this so much. Like, G5 doesn't have to be the same as G4. Just let it be different, for goodness sake. Let G5 be different than G4. Stop putting on to G4. Let G5 be different. People hated Terry Tale for not having the same art style as G4. But it's actually good that it isn't the same as in G4. Because G5 was trying to be different than G4. Not the same, but to have its own identity. People hate G5 not because it's bad, but because it's too different than what they're used to. It's too different than G4, but that doesn't make it bad. But G5 wanted to be its own thing apart from G4, and that's good. But people don't want to give G5 a chance just because it is so different from G4. People are way too biased to G4, but we shouldn't cling on to G4 and hate every other generation. But we need to treat every generation with fairness and learn for the generations to stand on their own without unfair comparisons. Just because something is different doesn't mean it's bad. We need to prepare for this for when G6 comes out. It might not do what we expected it to do. It might not be what we wanted it to be. And it might be different to G4. But just because something is different doesn't mean it's bad. There are many TV shows that are way different than My Little Pony, like Doctor Who, Ninjago, Gravity Falls, Stranger Things, Monk, and so many others. And so many shows have different animation styles. But just because a show is different doesn't mean it's bad. There are many animated shows that have a completely different animation style than G4. But just because a show has a different animation style than G4 doesn't mean the animation style is bad because it's different. It doesn't mean the show is bad. It doesn't give you the right to throw hate on the animation style of a show just because it isn't like G4. Just like G5, there are many TV shows that are animated differently than G4. But a different animation style to G4 doesn't make the show bad. People say that the bean mouth art style makes Tell Your Tale immediately bad and won't even give the show a chance just because of the mouths. But Gravity Falls did the same thing with its art style as well. So by that logic, Gravity Falls is a terrible show just because it uses a bean mouth art style. But of course, it is not a bad show at all if you actually watch it. The same with Tell Your Tale and G5. Hating G5 and Tell Your Tale just because of the bean mouth art style is completely unfair and wrong. When other shows do the exact same thing, yet people call those shows amazing and good, and they call Tell Your Tale bad, even though most haters haven't even watched it for themselves? I love G5 because it is different than G4. Comparing G5 to G4 is completely unfair, because G5 wasn't made to be like G4 at all. It wasn't made to be like G4, and that is a good thing. Not a bad thing, that's a great thing. It wasn't trying to be like G4 at all, and it was trying to be its own thing, to make its own mark, and to tell its own tale, pun intended. So it is completely unfair to compare G4 to G5 and say G5 is bad because it isn't like G4, or to say G5 is bad because it wasn't as good as G4. I'm so tired of hearing this. Those arguments are completely unfair. For example, I like Doctor Who as a show way more than My Little Pony because the writing in Doctor Who is so good and better than the writing in G4 of My Little Pony in many ways. But just because My Little Pony isn't as good as Doctor Who, or just because I like Doctor Who more than My Little Pony, does that mean that My Little Pony is bad? No, of course not. Both shows are very different, and both shows are very good for completely different reasons. The same is true of G4 and G5. They are both good in their own ways for very different reasons. They were not meant to be the same at all. They weren't made to be compared to each other, but they are made to be different, not the same. Maybe you like My Little Pony more than other shows you watch, but just because you like My Little Pony more than other shows, does that mean those other shows you like and watch are bad? No, of course not. People say G5 is bad because it isn't as good as G4. But just because you like G4 more than G5, does that mean that G5 is bad? No. Because just because you like G4 more than the other shows you watch, that doesn't mean that those other shows are bad, right? Just because you like G4 more than the show doesn't mean the show is bad. Neither is G5. Just because you personally like G4 more than the other shows, or like G4 more than G5, doesn't mean G5 is bad. And personally, I actually like G5 even more than G4. That's right, I love G5 more than G4, I'm gonna say it. And I am not the only one either. I've actually found other people in the fandom who like G5 more than G4, like Heart Nightwing, or Furlan Cortez, who all support G5 and love G5 even more than G4. G5 is my favorite generation. And going back to what was said in the G6 panel, being different is good. And this doesn't only apply to G6 but to G5 as well.
It's not just okay to be different. Like, being different is amazing.
G5 being different than G4 is good. Not a bad thing, it's a great thing, an amazing thing. That's why G5 doesn't have to have the same animation style, or the same characters, or the same music genre. And personally, I absolutely love the music in G5 way more than the music in G4. I know electronic pop music might not be for everyone, but I would rather listen to a G5 song than most G4 songs, because the songs in G5 are just absolutely amazing. Every single one of them is a banger. And just because it isn't your kind of music, doesn't mean other people can't enjoy it or like it. And doesn't mean the music itself is bad, because music is subjective at the end of the day for everyone's music taste. G5 doesn't have to be like G4. If G5 was the same as G4, then it wouldn't be unique or special in any way. But G5 being different is what makes it good and special. Just let G5 be different than G4 for goodness sake. But some people might say, now I don't hate G5 because it's different than G4, but I hate G5 because it has bad writing. Now, is G5 a perfect show? No. No, it is not. And I am fully aware of that. There are flaws to G5. But you know what? G4 has flaws too. G4 is not a perfect show either. It has many flaws. But just because it has a lot of flaws, does that mean that we should call G4 trash and throw it into the garbage? Does that mean we should hate G4? No! Even though G4 isn't perfect, we as fans don't call it trash. Why? Because we know there's a lot of great things about the show as well. Every show, even good shows, have many flaws. But just because a show has flaws doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. G5 has many flaws too. The same with G4. But because G5 has flaws, does that mean we should call G5 garbage and throw it into the trash? Does that mean we should hate on G5? No! Because even though G5 isn't perfect, just like with G4, it's still good in many ways. And we as fans can appreciate it for all the depth it has in its writing, rather than only looking at the negatives. And a lot of the hate that people have for G5 is completely unfair, making unfair comparisons to G4 and G5, and hating on G5 for doing certain things, when G4 does the exact same things that G5 does in many ways. And if you want to find out more about why G5 is good, watch this video I made about it here that explains the lore in G5 and how most of the criticisms people have are completely unfair. Now, I know I've been talking about G5 a lot in this video, when this video is supposed to be on G6. So then, why am I talking about G5 so much in a G6 video? Because all the hate that G5 got is very similar to what I already see happening to G6. People had so much unfair hate for G5 when it first came out, just because they were too biased to G4 on everything. And if we, as G5 fans, say nothing, people will only treat G6 the same way they treated G5, with unfair hate and unfair criticism, unwilling to give G6 a chance just because it's not the same as G4. I know that G6 hasn't even come out yet, but I'm surprised that people are already hating on it, even though they haven't even seen it themselves. People are already comparing G6 to G4, instead of giving it a chance to stand on its own, which is the same way people hated G5 when it first came out, comparing it to G4 all the time, which is unfair and biased to G4. Why does everyone have to hate everything on the internet all the time? People are just way too negative all the time online, and don't even know how to enjoy anything anymore. They always feel like they need to find the flaw in everything. They always have to criticize everything. And it's so sickening, and I'm so tired of it. Not everything needs to be criticized. Why do people hate everything so much? Do people actually enjoy anything anymore? I know this is the internet, and people are allowed to have their own opinions online, and I know that criticism can be good and valid at times, because it's good to want a show to be better. However, there's a big difference between sharing an actual good criticism with a show and just making up excuses to hate on something because you hate it, when most of your criticisms are unfair or just wrong. There was also a lot of unfair hate for G6 after it got announced and leaked. Everyone was claiming that the promotional art looked like AI, as well as a theme song sounding like a generic song that Suno AI would generate. People have been accusing G6 of being AI slop. However, if you actually do very, very, very easy research, you will find that it was actually not made by AI at all. The artwork is not AI slop just because you think it is, but it was made by a real person, by Nicholas Cole on Instagram, whose artwork looks like this. And he's also part of the anti-AI protest group. And the theme song was not made by Suno AI or any AI at all, but it was written by Jessica Charlotte Vagan and sung by Callie Rhodey. People are hating on G6 because they think it's AI slop. Why? Just because they feel like it is. However, just because you think something is AI doesn't mean that it is. If you call everything you see AI slop and don't even try to research the artist of the art, which took me like 2 seconds to do on Google, and if you call real art made by a real person AI slop, then you do not have any right at all to call anything AI slop just because you feel like it. People also use websites that can quote-unquote detect if something is AI generated, and people claim that it has been quote-unquote confirmed that G6 was made by AI. Why? How was this confirmed according to these people? Because an AI program and websites told them so. People just blindly trust these random websites to tell them if something is AI generated or not, when many of these websites make mistakes and end up claiming real art as AI generated. When you call real art AI slop just because you feel like it is, you are spreading misinformation and hurting real artists who put real passion into their work. People are hating on G6, but it hasn't even come out yet. How can you know it's bad if you haven't even seen it yet? How about let's, actually wait and watch G6 before we can judge it to say if it's good or not? People also treat G5 the same way as well. There are so many people who hate G5, but when I ask most of those people, have you actually watched G5? Most of them say, no, I haven't. But how can you know a show is bad if you haven't even seen it for yourself? G5 has amazing depth if you watch it for yourself, with the character arc of Misty being stuck with Opaline, who represents an abusive parent, or with the story arc of Allura, which is one of the greatest villains of all of My Little Pony. People would love G5 if they actually watched it for themselves and gave it a chance, rather than comparing it to G4 all the time. If you haven't seen it yet, then you absolutely have no right to judge it at all if you haven't seen it for yourself. You cannot say if it's bad at all if you haven't seen it. Stop relying on the opinions of others online, on the hate videos, and learn to make opinions about these things yourselves by watching the show on your own. That is what I learned for myself when watching G5. I also used to think that G5 was bad too, but that was only because I was letting all the negative videos create my own opinion on the show, rather than forming my own opinion on the show myself. And over time, I learned to really love and appreciate G5 for how it was, and you can too if you give it a chance. But I know that you might have reasons why you think G5 is bad, but in the end, it doesn't matter what people's negative opinions on G5 are, even if some of your points are valid, because it's always better to focus on the good of G5 rather than only looking at the negatives. And while it can be good to point out criticism, it's always better to focus on the show's positives rather than only viewing the negatives. After all, isn't that what we do with G4 itself? G4 is not flawless either, it has problems. But just because G4 isn't perfect, does that mean we call G4 a bad show? No! We need to treat G5 the same way we treat G4. And if you don't treat G5 the same way we treat G4, then you don't hate G5 because it's actually bad, but you're just being biased to G4 and trying to make unfair excuses to hate on it. When G5 has many good qualities as well that most people just ignore completely to throw hate on a new generation. People give unfair criticism to G5, but we shouldn't treat it that way. and we should be willing to give G6 a chance as well, rather than already hating it before we've even seen it. It might actually be really good, but I wouldn't be surprised if it gets hate when it comes out. But this time, let's actually try to give G6 a chance for once. Don't treat G6 the same way the fandom treated G5. Let it be a generation that can stand on its own, even if it is reusing old G4 characters. And on that topic, let's talk more about the characters in G6. So if you look at the poster we have for Forever Friendship, you can see the main characters for G6: Twilight Sparkle, Pinkie Pie, Fluttershy, and Rainbow Dash. However, we have to mention the elephant in the room. Where are Applejack and Rarity? Well, at the panel, they hinted how Applejack and Rarity will be added to the show later on, probably similarly to how Misty was added to the main 6 in G5 over time.
Forever Friendship will start with 4 beloved G4 characters: Twilight Sparkle, Fluttershy, Pinkie Pie, and Rainbow Dash. But there is a whole cast of both iconically recognizable and brand new characters to be discovered on the journey. And so though you may not see 2 of your favorite ponies in the core unit at the very start, this is only the very beginning of the story.
Just the beginning of the story.
They also stated how there will be brand new characters in this series as well, which again shows how the generation will be different from G4 and probably be its own thing, in its own continuity. And the fact that G6 doesn't have Rarity or Applejack in the core group, at least in the start, is just more proof and evidence that they are trying to be their own generation, because if this really was just a G4 reboot, then they would definitely reboot the entire main 6 from the start, from the beginning. But because they didn't do that, and they didn't even use the full main 6, then that is proof that they are trying to do something new and different than G4, and that this is not just a G4 reboot, because it doesn't have the same main 6 at all. One show that is basically a G4 reboot is Pony Life, which is a show I've never talked about on my channel before, but something that I may make a video on in the future sometime. Pony Life was basically just a G4 reboot, because it has all the same characters from G4 and the same voice actors, with the exception of Spike and Discord being replaced. But besides that, with a couple other minor differences, like Fluttershy having glowing powers for some reason, or with an emphasis on potions and Sugar Cube Corner, the characters are pretty much all the same, with the same voices, personalities, and the same design, with the ponies just having a different art style. But if you look at G6, it is not at all the same as Pony Life was. Pony Life was a G4 reboot, with all the main characters keeping the same G4 designs, just having it in a new art style, with the same voice actors and personalities. But G6 doesn't just have the same main 6 keeping the same exact designs and new art style, but they are completely different, with Fluttershy looking most different and Twilight being a unicorn again. Not to mention that Applejack and Rarity are missing at the start, showing how this generation is different than G4, not the same at all. With also the fact that they have new voice actors instead of the same actors, is all pointing to the fact that this is not a G4 reboot at all, but something entirely new and different. As I said before, just because they reuse old G4 characters doesn't necessarily mean it will be a G4 reboot, because that's literally what every single generation of My Little Pony does. We're using old characters. Then again, the fact that all the main characters are based off the G4 main 6 does make it feel like more of a reboot, so I guess it kind of makes sense to see it that way. But the overall designs look completely different, showing how the characters could be reinvented and different than how they were in G4. There's a chance I could be wrong about G6, and it is more of a reboot of G4, but I personally am hoping that it's not. So, once again, just because G6 reuses G4 characters doesn't necessarily mean it will be a G4 reboot, because every generation of My Little Pony does the same thing, with reusing characters from old generations, and always reinventing them and changing them. The entire world building and premise and vibe of the show will likely be completely different, and possibly nothing like G4, making it fair to judge it on its own without any unfair comparisons to G4. But I think I do agree with most people that I wish they just stuck to making new characters for the main characters, rather than relying on the G4 main 6 just because G4 is more popular. Then again, Hasbro already made new and original characters in G5 that were completely different, but some people still hated them as well. If G6 did end up having new and original characters for the main 6, instead of going back to G4 characters, there's still a good chance that people in the fandom would still hate on those new characters, like they did for G5, just because they're different than G4. If we want Hasbro to make new and original generations, then we need to support a new and original generation and support G5, instead of only looking at the criticisms and ignoring all the good writing in G5. If we hate on G5 and compare to G4 all the time, and say things like, G5 is trash, G4 is better, then we are only telling Hasbro that what the fans want is only more G4 and no more original generations. Because people hated on the new and original generation when it came out, because G4 is what we like the most. If G6 does end up being a G4 reboot, we shouldn't be surprised at all one bit. Why? Because of all our unfair criticisms for G5 and comparing it to G4 all the time, we are telling Hasbro that I only want more of G4, and how we only support G4 and hate other generations. We shouldn't be surprised if G6 is a G4 reboot, because we made it that way. If G6 is a G4 reboot, that is partially our fault, because we are the ones who told Hasbro that all we want and like is G4. You can't only blame Hasbro for this. This is partially our fault as well. We're the ones to blame. So if you want Hasbro to focus on new and original generations, and stop going back to G4 nostalgia for everything, then we have to support those new and original generations when Hasbro makes them, and support G5. And if you only stick to G4, then we are only telling Hasbro that all I want is more G4 content. Because if that's what the fans like the most, then that is what the company will make the most, because that's what will make the company the most profit. That is just how marketing and business works. At the end of the day, Hasbro's main goal is not in making a good story, it's not in making a new generation that's original, but it's in making it make the most money as possible. And if G4 is the most popular and what the most fans want, then it's what we'll get. And we shouldn't be surprised at all. And if the fans only support G4 and don't support new and original generations, like G5, then more G4 content is all we're going to get, because that's what will make the company the most money. So if you want Hasbro to stop going back to G4 and to not reboot it, then be a part of the solution. Don't be part of the problem, be part of the solution and support G5. Support new and original generations when they come out, without making unfair comparisons to G4. Stop sticking to G4 only and appreciate new and original generations as well. Because if we just stick to G4, then more G4 content is all we're going to get. Because that's what we're telling Hasbro it's all we want. But still, despite G6 using G4 characters, I still think there's a good chance that G6 could still be a new and different generation than G4 as well. They also said in the panel that there'll be more recognizable characters in G6 as well. So besides Rarity and Applejack, possibly more characters from G4? Or even from other generations? Like how the Cutie Mark Camp leak showed Miss Thief from G5 returning? As well as Sunny and Pip in the concept art? So hopefully, maybe, at least some G5 characters might be reused again in this new series. That's what I'm hoping for personally. And maybe even Minty from G3 can return again? But I know that's just wishful thinking. But of course the characters will likely be way different than how they were in the other generations. I personally am very excited for the show, because the people who are working on it are some of the same writers from Tale Tale. And if you've watched all of Tale Tale, and I mean all of it, you know that these writers know how to tell a good story. Tale Tale had great depth, continuity, overarching stories, character development, plot threads lasting over many episodes, great lessons, emotional depth, great songs, and great stories in general. And if the writers of Tale Tale know how to do all that, then I'm confident they will make G6 into a great show, and the episodes of Forever Friendship will be 9 minutes long, which is a lot longer than the 5-minute long Tell Tale episodes, meaning the episodes will have better pacing and more room to breathe, and will have more time to make the episodes have more depth. And if you look at many of the animatics from Tell Tale episodes, many of them are very good and better than the cut down 5-minute versions. Buried in a Good Book is a great example of this, where they had to cut out some of the best parts in the episode because Hasbro forced the show to be 5 minutes long. This episode literally cut out Misty's character arc in the entire episode for the sake of time, which made the episode a lot more shallow than it was supposed to be. Hawk Nightwing's video on this episode explains it well, if you want to check that out. These writers know how to tell stories, they do. And with the episodes for G6 being longer than 5 minutes than they were in Tell Your Tale, there was more room to tell deeper stories and to have greater depth and length, which has me very excited for this show so much. And since Tell Your Tale was cancelled, there was a lot of stories that never saw the light of day, or plot threads and ideas that never got finished or used. So maybe the writers can reuse some of those old cancelled stories and ideas and reinvent them somehow for G6, so that G5 will still live on in this new generation even just a little bit. Overall, I am very optimistic for G6, and I look forward to making videos on it as the episodes come out in the future. But what do you all think of G6? Are you excited for it? Or are you still not sure about it? Leave your thoughts in the comments. I am Ultrasonic Rainboom, and I'll see you all next time.
My little pony, my little pony, my little pony, forever friendship. Shine, light will lead the way. The stories that we make, adventures every day.